My name is Erin Murphy. I'm a member of the Minnesota Senate and the Senate DFL Majority Leader. It's good to be together with you here today, the first of our press availabilities, et cetera, at the start of what is the second year of the biennium, the 78th day, and the beginning of the next phase and generation of the work that we intend to do for the people of Minnesota. The Capitol is a place to hear rumors, and as usual, the place is full of rumors. And one of them that I am hearing a little bit of is that this is a session where we won't have to do a lot of work because we did so much last session. And I want to be really crystal clear with the people of Minnesota that we are here to do the work of the people of Minnesota, that we raised our hand, we asked to run for office, and we know that it is our job to show up every day, to show Minnesotans that we hear them, we know what they're contending with, and we're ready to do that work. We passed a powerful agenda last session, we did. But that doesn't mean we've run out of good ideas. That doesn't mean that Minnesotans aren't still contending with the cost of childcare, the lack of access to health care, the rent is sometimes too high, food insecurity, et cetera. We recognize that Minnesotans are struggling, and so therefore we know that we have more work to do. We expect this session to be busy and productive. We are fortunate to be working alongside a tremendous and talented staff who have carried us through and have shown up for work today, ready to do the work for the people of Minnesota, and that is the same for our caucus. Each of us, despite the challenges that we have faced in the last week and a little bit more with the news of Leader Dietzich, have come here ready to work for the people of Minnesota. And I want to say thank you to both the staff and to our members and to the larger body, the 67 of us who came into work today, took our votes, and got us underway. When we took office a year ago, after winning the majority, we set our sights on 4 principles, and those principles continue to carry us through today. We agreed to center the lives of Minnesotans to make sure that the economy is serving each of us so we're able to live the life as our choosing and prosper. We want to make sure that we are protecting and expanding rights and freedoms while we are defending our democracy. We're working to lower costs, raise wages, and bring stability to the lives of the people, and we're going to continue to ensure safe communities, strong schools, and a healthy climate. These principles haven't changed for us, and they will guide us again as we act this session to protect and improve and build upon the work in this second year of this term. And when I say protecting, I mean not backing down on universal school meals, but adding to that with the innovation or the addition of milk. Making sure that paid family leave is strong in the workplace. We won't back down on reproductive rights and reproductive freedom. We're not going to go negotiate against hungry kids or sick workers or access to health care. Improving means taking what we have learned since last session to strengthen new laws, like legalizing cannabis, consumer protections, tenant rights, labor laws, and keeping students safe in schools. And building means, of course, building on the infrastructure that we're responsible for so that in every community across the state, Minnesotans are operating with an infrastructure that supports them, and we together are operating with an infrastructure that supports our future. Standing with me today are the leaders of our caucus, who bring with them a diversity of background, areas of expertise, and different communities which we represent together. President Champion, whose name is befitting for a champion of civil rights, criminal justice reform, and equitable opportunity. Senator Chair Frentz, who knows how to keep homes heated and lights on without blowing the budget of Minnesota or Minnesotans. Senator Herr brings to his work at the Capitol a deep love for water, soil, wildlife, and natural resources. Chair Kunish will continue to advocate for basic rights, whether that's the rights of women or the right to a public education. Senator Bolden is the keeper of our democracy and our right to vote. And Senator Morrison will continue to fight to make sure that everyone, regardless of our ability to pay or wherever we live, have access to affordable and high-quality health care. The priorities that I've named for each of these stellar leaders are the priorities for all of us. As our colleague Senator Dietzich often has said, whatever differences exist within our caucus, we have so much more in common. That's how we got so much done last year, and that's how we're going to continue to do the important work that we are charged with for the people of Minnesota. I'd say we're ready to get back to work, except for that we really haven't quit working over the course of the interim, which makes us ready to go. So we'll be reading the bills that have been introduced. Some of those bills are going to get bill hearings, and a subset of them will be voted on. We're legislators. We legislate. We come to this work ready to do the work for the people of Minnesota, despite our differences, building on our common and shared values to make sure that we're putting in place an agenda and the tools for Minnesotans. And when I think about that work, I'd say that's not boring, not at all. And in fact, I'm pretty excited, and I know my colleagues are as well. We want to do the work for the people of Minnesota. We're very, very grateful to be here today, and with that, we will take your questions.
Equal rights amendment today, several of the senators were at that rally. Speaker Hortman just said reproductive rights could also get added. What kind of language, and does it get through the Senate?
So the Senate passed the Equal Rights Amendment at the end of the last session, and there's been a tremendous amount of work done between that passage and over the course of the interim. Senator Caucus has been intimately involved in that to make sure that the language is modern and reflects what we would want to say in the state's constitution.
So we'll see different language you expect this session?
I would expect different language this session.
With reproductive rights in it?
Yeah.
Senator Giesecke was obviously able to hold together the very thin margin in the Senate quite well. We already see a couple of issues, one being the sanctuary state bill, another being conflict in Palestine, causing a couple of rifts and opinions in the Senate DFL caucus. Are you confident that the DFL will be able to hold it together this year like they did last year?
Senator Giesecke showed us, and we have learned the lesson that when we act together and we stick together, we can do important work to improve the lives of Minnesotans. We're all committed to that. It is natural for a group of 34 people or a group of 67 people elected by Minnesotans across the state to have differences. That's part of representative democracy. That's part of this process. But we understand that to do the work that Minnesotans sent us means that we will stick together, and we will.
You mentioned milk in the free lunch. Is milk not included in the free lunches now, or there's going to be a bill to add that? Or?
Senator Gustafson is doing work on this to make sure that someone brings their lunch to school, they can get access to milk.
Oh, so you can get just the milk for free if you don't get lunch.
Do you have a fiscal note on that?
I don't, Mary Lehammer, have a fiscal note on that, but it's milk and it's Minnesota, so it's probably free.
We'll check with the Dairy Association, actually.
Senator, you call them rumors, we call them on-the-record statements from the governor and the speaker that there's a limited agenda this session. Can you sort of separate policy issues and sort of budget and taxes issues? I mean, a lot of money was spent last year, a lot of tax bill last year. Can you speak specifically to sort of spending bills and tax bills this session?
So we know that we will be doing a little bit of work on taxes very early this session. And when we get the forecast, Peter, at the end of February, we'll have a better sense of the forecast for the state's budget going forward, and that's going to inform our work. We know that capital investment in bonding is going to be a primary focus for our work. That's true for the House and the Senate and for the administration and for the people of Minnesota, and we'll take it from there.
What about school resource officers? The House already had a pretty good fight on it today. Republicans wanting an emergency declared, saying it's not moving fast enough. Portman says could be on the floor by next week. What's your speed and response on the school resource officer issue?
So there has been so much work done by Senator Westland and Representative Frazier, among others, and we're prepared to take this up in education this week or next as well. We understand that the House wants to move it quickly. If you have anything to add, let me know. This is work that we committed to, and from my perspective for our caucus, we want to make sure that our students are safe in school. They're in schools where they can learn, where the employees that are working there are safe, and that's the heart of the matter. So I'm really proud of the work that Senator Westland has done to get us ready to take that up.
When should it be on the floor?
I would expect in the next 2 to 3 weeks we should take it up on the floor.
It's not as important, but certainly a lot of interest in sports betting. I know the Senate and the House are all over the place, Republicans and Democrats. Your thoughts on that this year?
Senator Klein has done masterful work on this legislation. I know there's been more work done on that in the interim, and I expect that there will be another hearing in the Senate. And if it can earn 34 votes, and I would imagine that it'll be bipartisan votes, it may get done. I know that there's a lot of support by Minnesotans. There's a support by tribal leaders. And Senator Klein has done tremendous work to get us to this point, and we'll see where we go from there.
What's the caucus position on an assault rifle assault weapon ban look like right now?
So the caucus doesn't have a position on that question. Like so many issues, there are going to be bills introduced. We're going to hear them in the committees, and we're going to see if they earn support.
So I realize this is a sensitive question, but given the margins, Senator Dietzig wasn't here today. And we have received very limited information on her status. Do you have a return date for her, or what can you tell us any more about when we might see her on the floor? She wasn't voting today, or what's happening there?
I appreciate your recognition, Rochelle, that that is a sensitive topic. And as a human and as a nurse, I understand that we should respect Senator Dietzig's privacy. She's given us every indication she's planning to participate. We might not see her on the floor right away. We might not see her in committee right away, but I have been texting with her over the weekend, not just about what we're doing over the weekend, but about policy matters, and she's engaged, and I expect that she will continue to serve as a member of our caucus and a member of the Senate.
Leader Johnson last week was talking about how he's excited for the opportunity to work with you as the new majority leader. Is that sentiment returned both ways, I would assume?
It is.
And remote voting, just back to Rochelle's question a little bit, remote voting, those rules still in place that will ease the situation if Senator Dietzig can't be here in person?
I think the Senate, the legislature in general, has learned over the course of the pandemic and in the wake of the pandemic, there is some value in that. And we've had experiences in the Minnesota Senate with members who have been sick and have been able to participate remotely despite that, Senator Thomasoni being the very, very clear example of that for us.
And there was bipartisan support, am I remembering that correctly, for some version of remote voting or not?
Yes.
Hey, Senator, did you make any changes in your leadership team from what you inherited? And also, who gets your committee?
So we haven't made any changes to our leadership team, and we won't. We haven't made any changes to our leadership staff, and we won't. There will be a vacancy for an assistant leader, and the caucus will take that up in due time.
State government?
That is unclear right now.
Speaker Hortman told us she doesn't think the votes are there this year for Sanctuary State or North Star Act. Same sentiment from this side?
As I mentioned earlier, John, I think it's important that we rely on the committee process. So there will be bills that are introduced. Some of them are going to be heard, not all of them, and some of them will come to the floor for a vote.
When could the Senate DFL have a new chief of staff?
So it is a chief priority, I think, for the caucus, for the leadership staff, and for me. And we're gonna find the person that fits the bill, and when we do, I will let you know.
What about your freshmen? You had a record freshman class. I think you were intimately involved in recruiting a lot of them. What are they anxious for when you say go to work? What do they want to work? They're a huge part of your caucus.
So the good news about this caucus and the members is we are, to a person, really committed to doing the work for the people of Minnesota and doing it well with integrity. So when I asked at the end of last week, what are the things you want to get done this session? What are the 2 priorities for the caucus? What are the things that you need to do? In the district you represent, I didn't get just a couple of answers. I got a list. They are, to a person, focused on the communities that they represent and wanting to do the work for those people and for Minnesotans. So we have a pretty robust list of items. And again, we are legislators. That's going to come through the committee process. But they very much want to do the work for the people of Minnesota.
Anything though specific from that freshman class that they're anxious on that you're hearing they'd still like to get done?
I think that what I've heard the most from the caucus in this last week is that we want to stick together to get the work of the people done.
Since we have so many leaders here, I'm curious about the Posse Caucus and if there are any priorities that are specifically different from the ones that you've already mentioned that are going to be top of mind this session.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Senator Mary Kunish. I represent District 39, and I've been acting as the chair of the Posse Caucus, People of Color and Indigenous. I would say that we will continue to do the work that looks at how we can best serve our communities of color and Indigenous. For example, I have a bill that is going to reinforce MIFPA once again. President Champion has a bill on the American Indian Family Preservation Act. we will be looking for ways to support the communities that have been the most disenfranchised over time, whether it's housing or healthcare, education, all of those things that are going to allow our families of color and indigenous to have the same opportunities that many people that are not Native or not folks of color have been able to access for hundreds of years. And so a lot of catching up around those. We're in an election year, so we want to make sure that there's access to voting polls, that everybody is educated around their voting rights. And it's just a really wide list of things to enhance those communities that we all represent.
Sorry, you said your bill to reinforce, you said?
MIFPA, a Minnesota Indian Family Preservation Act. Yep.
What will that bill look like?
Last year, we did a really intense kind of version of the National ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act, because that was under chance of going away. So this year, we're going back. There's an incredible group that spent the entire summer going through the legislation, going through the statutes once again, updating it, and bringing it into a new piece of legislation that's going to update all of those things, working with the counties and other entities. So it's a work in progress. You know how it is, you get into something and you realize, oh, this needs to be updated. Ooh, we need to fix that. And so we expect that it'll take a couple of years to really get it where it needs to be.
Leader Murphy, are there any plans right now for proposals on constitutional amendments, say maybe something codifying abortion rights?
So the question about the ERA would include language around abortion rights and reproductive freedom. Senator Herr has carried the Environmental Trust Fund language that will be on the ballot.
Unless you have a specific
No,
question
yeah.
on that.
That's
fine.
good, yeah.
All right, folks, we have time for a couple more.
Well, you've already put the trust fund on the ballot, correct? The other ones that people are asking for are housing, statewide housing, sales tax, and then there's a common cause version on a redistricting commission. Do you see anything other than trust fund going on the ballot in 2024?
So right now we know the trust fund is going to go on the ballot in 2024. I want to make sure that the questions that go on the ballot belong, of course, in the Constitution, that we're confident that Minnesotans are prepared to vote for them. And if we put too many questions on the ballot, I think we create a problem for ourselves. So I'll be looking at that lens and working with my colleagues to understand what should move forward. With regard to the ERA, we'll see what the House does with that language before it comes back to us.
Speaking of things on the ballot, I mean, it seems like the state flag seems to be a priority for the Senate Republican caucus. I mean, is that something you guys will consider hearing, you know, maybe putting that on the ballot, however that might end up working?
So me again. I was the author of that bill. I don't believe that we can put it on to as a ballot question because our Constitution just doesn't allow for that. The decision was made. We followed the legislation to the T and did the incredible work of discussion and education and exploration and all of those things. And I'm very, very proud of the work that the committee did, of the chair and the vice chair. And we did everything that we said we were going to do in the way that we did it, and we did it well. And so there really shouldn't be any reason to go back and revisit it.
Are you concerned that it's turned into a partisan issue? Is there the new flag for Democrats and Republicans with the old flag? Has that happened?
Yeah, it has. I mean, to be honest, if you notice, they have a pin today that was shown to me, and they are sporting the old flag. But change is hard. Change is hard for anybody. Folks look at these different things through different lenses, and at the end of the day, you know, it just might take time for different people to accept and acknowledge and recognize that progress is a good thing. And it's a beautiful flag, something to be proud of.
And
And seeing the old flag still being worn and flown, how does that make you feel as a Native woman in Posse Caucus? Can you explain that layer?
Sure. Well, I don't have a problem with, if people want to wear a pin with the old flag, or if they want to fly the old flag, I would say that's their prerogative to do that. I think that there is still a lot of education to be done around what is on that, the old flag emblem and the old seal. I think people, again, have maybe misunderstood or been told information that isn't quite true. And so, again, I think that as we discuss this more and we talk about what went into the seal and the flag in the past, they'll recognize that it's a good time to move along.
Did you find the old flag and seal offensive?
I do. But I'm also recognizing that, like any piece of art or any object, people are going to interpret it in different ways, and that, again, is their prerogative, and there's really nothing I can do about that.
Speaker Hortman has said she is interested in potentially legislation that would, I guess, grandfather in uniforms and things like that with the old seal, so counties don't have to buy new ones right away. Is that something you or your caucus would be open to? Like the law enforcement badges and stuff until they wear
Well,
out?
there's nothing in the statute that says you have to switch over by such and such a time. And so I would assume that as, uniforms have to be changed, as stationery has to be updated, as seals on a vehicle need to be redetailed, that they would come around and use the new flag as is legislated.
All right, we have time for Shannon and Alex.
So there's been more activity in the House on medical aid and dying than I've really heard anything about in the Senate. Can you speak to that?
So just like any other significant piece of legislation, we're at the beginning of a discussion across Minnesota on this question. The House took it up. They took it up and did a very, very long hearing. And I expect that it's going to take time for us as a people, as Minnesotans, to reconcile the way we feel and what we think about that legislation. So we're at the beginning of a process that will probably take more than 1 year before we're in a place where we can adopt it. I know there are Minnesotans that are ready. They want us to answer this question for them now. But on a question like this that is this sensitive about our very lives, I think it's important for us to use the process over time to build support. So we've got some consensus around that question.
Alex.
Are we going to see any movement on sanctuary state legislation?
Again, introduced by one of our members. We'll see if it gets heard. We'll see if there's support for it.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Mark?